Wait, do you remember the Chinese guy that predicted every expansion? Well, within reason. He's been right until now, and he predicted next expansion would be Elemental Lord themed. Oh, did he though? Did he? Really? Send me a link to that, Coverdeed. I'd love to see that. I don't want to, like, do the work and find it, but I'll happily read it if someone DMs it to me. We saw the Elemental Lords in the Nyalotha time travel thing. We did indeed. And of course, the Elemental Lords obviously could have some, connection to the old gods and things like that. But, I mean, the obvious end game for the incarnates would be to release the Elemental Lords from the Elemental Plane, which is a Titan created prison for them, right? You know, the Titans created the Elemental Plane to imprison the Elemental Lords on. Like, the very obvious super objective for the Primal Incarnates would be to release them back into the world. No one wants to think about that because nobody wants it. Nobody wants it to be true. I don't give a shit. No one wants to fight Ragnaros for a third time. No one gives a shit about any of the other Elemental Lords. They are lame-o. Like, okay, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe people love it. I don't know. But that's definitely my thinking. That's definitely, like, my mindset. Okay. Should we have a gander? So this is the Chinese guy that apparently predicts every expansion with some things wrong. On 27/09/24, a CN gamer predicted 8.0s about old gods and 9.0s about New Lich King and Shadowlands. He also predicted that 10.0 will be about dragons. If it turns out to be true, then he's 3 for 3. I made a mind map to explain his thought process. In fairness, lots of us predicted these things. But I'm going to give this the attention I think it deserves. On September 24th, 2017, roughly 2 months before Blizzard officially announced the BFA expansion, a Chinese gamer named Solist posted a WoW expansion speculation thread on NGA, National Geographic of Azeroth, one of the biggest WoW and gaming forums in China. RIP. You didn't predict them in 2017, though. Bitch, do I have to show you my video history? Where not only do I predict BFA, but I predict every single feature in BFA? Do we have to go back to this? Wow, some of these old thumbnails are wild. I love them. Yes, 19th of October, 2017. Yes, I did predict it in 2017, yeah. Okay, but the Chinese guy predicted Shadowlands and Dragonflight in 2017. Oh, okay. All right, okay. Now that's a baby face. I think I look better now. I'm much happier with my look these days. I get that you'd all rather have sex with the guy on the screen up there. I get that. If it comes down to sexy times, that guy up there, I get it. But I think I look better now. Whatever, man. Anyway, yeah, I predicted things, but the Chinese guy predicted things. That's quite right. No, fair enough. Very, very good point. Okay. Where were we? He predicted that 8.0 would be about old gods. 9.0 would be about the new Lich King and Shadowlands, which turned out to be correct. He also predicted 10.0 would be about dragons. This thread has been liked 1,575 times and called the God thread since then. Here is the rough translation of the thread. Today, when I was reviewing previous WoW expansions, I suddenly realized that TBC's lore consisted of 2 parts, the Draenor line and the Burning Legion line, leading towards Draenor and Legion expansions respectively, which means 6.0 and 7.0 expansions were split from 2.0 expansion. Therefore, it is inferred that 8.0 and 9.0 expansions would be split from 3.0 expansion. 8.0 should be correspond to the Old Gods line, 9.0 would be about Wrath of the Lich King's Scourge line. We would see the new Lich King and Shadowlands stuff in it. 10.0 and 11.0 should correspond to dragons and elemental lords respectively, and both lines will come to an end. 12.0's lore should have something to do with the war between Alliance and Horde in MoP. That one sounds very unlikely. 13.0 is about Shah's line in MoP, but this time the main villain should be the Void Lord. Through 8.0 to 12.0, the Void Lords are the real villain behind all the chaos. The Burning Legion first showed up in 2.0, and they finally came to an end in 7.0 after 4 expansions. The Void Lords first showed up in... Okay, this is very interesting, and I like the way that they've done this. It's worth noting that by the time... And I'm going to have to pick holes in this as much as I can, right? I have to pick holes in this as much as I can. It's my job. In 2017, Chronicle had already come out, which means that everyone knew that the Void Lords had been repositioned as the big bad. Like, saying Void Lords are like the newly repositioned big baddies at this point is not insightful. You know, like, Chronicle came out and purposely in like build up to Legion repositioned the Void Lords as the big baddie. They were the ones that Sargeras was scared of, which is why he became Sargeras, right? Like, so, you know, that's not particularly insightful, but, you know, hey, dude, lots of us had predicted BFA at this point, but yeah, predicting Shadowlands, pretty good. Predicting dragons for the expansion after that, pretty good. Can't argue with that. That is big. That is good. What else we got? Thought process. TBC lore. WoD line 6.0 expansion. Burning Legion line 7.0 expansion. Wrath of the Lich King. So what he's saying basically is, starting from Warlords of Draenor, they were basically rerunning the old expansions from TBC, but 2 new expansions per old expansion. So if each old expansion had, you know, if you could identify 2 different lines from each old expansion, they were doing 1 expansion of each. So TBC had like Draenor and it had Burning Legion. They separated out Draenor for Warlords of Draenor, Burning Legion for Legion. Wrath of the Lich King had Old Gods and Scourge. They did Old Gods for BFA, Scourge for the one after. Not sure how he came to the conclusion that Old Gods would come before Scourge, because Old Gods is very much a secondary thing in Wrath of the Lich King. And like, BFA was ultimately about Old Gods. I do not have a shadow of a doubt, and I've said this many times, there's not a single doubt in my mind that Warlords of Draenor, that BFA was originally conceived, like when they had their big chart of upcoming expansions and things, there's not a doubt in my mind that BFA was originally conceived as the Ashara N'Zoth expansion. That's what it was. And they were like, we're going to have Nazjatar, we're going to have Nyalotha, you know, we're going to have like this cool zone in Kultiras, which is like blatantly Old God stuff. It's going to be really cool. Because all of those like hints and lines were there all the way through the expansion. Like, there was never any doubt that N'Zoth was going to be, if not the last boss, although most people thought he would be, if not the last boss, then super important in the expansion. And at some point, Alex Afrasiabi decided that he wanted it to be this thing. Maybe they'd already thought of Shadowlands by then. And, you know, the focus got shifted into a part of the expansion that was probably going to be so it was probably going to be, you know, N'Zoth and the Ashara expansion, and they would be having like a faction war as kind of like a backdrop to that. You know, maybe N'Zoth was kind of making the faction war happen, sort of thing. But then they decided to like retool and refocus on the faction war as being like front and foremost of that, and made the Old God stuff and Ashara like very secondary, to the extent that it always felt a bit tacked on. But there's no doubt in my mind, no doubt, that it was conceived as the N'Zoth expansion at first. In the game files, there's a work in progress zone where you're basically walking on N'Zoth. Behind Nazjatar, it was part of the Nazjatar zone in the files originally, and it was I've got a feeling they were just playing with it, and I'm not sure how seriously it was ever meant to be. But yeah, in the files for ages, there was, behind the palace in Nazjatar was N'Zoth, and N'Zoth was part of the zone that you would like literally walk on and stuff like that. He was huge. So there's no doubt in my mind that BFA was conceived as an Old God expansion. And then Cataclysm lore, Dragon line, and Elemental Lords line. So his thinking is that 10.0 is the Dragon line and 11.0 is the Elemental Lords line. Now, if this thought process chart is indeed from 2017, then this is incredibly impressive. No doubt about it. No doubt about it. This is very impressive. I've got a feeling this actual graphic is from a bit later, because I got the feeling when this graphic is made, we did know about Shadowlands just by the color scheme on here. So I feel like this chart isn't from 2017. Yeah, it's worth mentioning that their predictions of 12.0 and 13.0 look incredibly unlikely. I would bet my house on the Horde and Alliance war not being 12.0. Right? There's absolutely no doubt that Blizzard are working on 11.0 right now. They probably have a rough plan for 12.0 as well. But they're definitely working on 11.0 on a pretty, they've got to have something to show at BlizzCon, right? They've got to have something to show at BlizzCon, so they're definitely working at 11.0. Can we be clear here? 11.0 will be announced at BlizzCon. BlizzCon is going to happen in November, and 11.0 will be announced. 100%. There is a BlizzCon. It's happening in November. Okay. The thing we definitely know is there is a BlizzCon, because Mike Ybarra has said there will be. And it's almost certain to be in November. Because Anaheim Convention Center is booked up everywhere apart from some days in November. I don't know the exact dates because if I looked at a calendar, we could give like a 2-week period where it has to be. So it's like the first half of November sometime is when it will be. But I 100% they'll be announcing 11.0 in BlizzCon. 100%. So they've got to have something to show, right? There is definitely development happening on 11.0 right now, and they've probably got like a concept for 12.0 on a whiteboard somewhere. Preacher's probably seen it. Oh yeah, Cataclysm was very heavily Old Gods. Yeah, totally. I mean, that's what like a whole hour of Twilight was about, right? Are you going to BlizzCon? If Blizz pay for us, yes. If Blizz don't pay for us, maybe. Concept and design stages will be in advanced state right now. Dude, not just that, like literal zone design will be happening right now for 11.0. Like literal zone design will be happening. No doubt about it. They probably won't have started writing storyline for 11.0 yet, and like questing and stuff, but because they usually do that once the zones are up and kind of workable. But 100% they're doing that, yeah. No, Cataclysm was pretty much an Azoth expansion as well in many ways. But okay, so yeah, there's things that I'm into with these predictions. There's things which I'm a bit like, But no doubt, if this prediction was made in Legion, this is very, very impressive. Scarlet Crusade when? Okay. So a lot of the Scarlet Crusade stuff. Okay, there's a really interesting tweet about this, actually. We'll get onto that later. We'll get onto the Scarlet Crusade stuff in a minute. Because there's been a really, really interesting tweet from Steven about that. But let's focus on this just for a second. Oh, here it is in Chinese. With the date, just in case you were wondering. I can't read Chinese, so I'm just going to have to take it as read. That is right. Lace is like, interesting, looking into it. So I'm not very impressed with predicting BFA, because everyone had predicted BFA at this point, myself included. But I am impressed at seeming to predict Shadowlands after that, and Dragonflight after that. That is like genuinely impressive. Will the next expansion be Elemental Lords? I mean, like I say, the very obvious super objective for the Primal Incarnates would be to release the Elemental Lords. Do I think that will be the next expansion? I mean, they could easily tie that into to piratey stuff, which is what I think the next expansion will be. They could easily tie that into the Western continent. When I say piratey stuff, I think piratey stuff will be an element of it. That'll be like an initial aesthetic of the expansion. But I think it will be beyond the Western storms, right? And I think, and again, this is basically just gut feeling, but, working on the logic in my head, I think it will be beyond the Western storms. Now, what would I do if I was a dev and we were exploring beyond the Western storms with a huge pirate horde? What would be my selling point? What would be my USP? What about world rework? Exactly. I'm really glad you brought that up, Discordian Kitty. If I was Ian and I was selling this new expansion, this is how I would do it. So a lot of people have been talking for a long time about a world rework. Reworking the old world, reworking those cataclysm zones, and, you know, that's something we were really looking at and something we've considered. And, you know, what that comes down to really, we started doing that in BFA, and what it comes down to a lot of the time is new trees and new buildings. And instead what we thought was, if we were to put together a pirate horde and for the first time sail beyond the Western Storms, instead of putting all of that work into remaking the old world, why didn't we just make a new old world? Okay, because I know what you're expecting. When you have a new expansion, everyone knows what to expect. You expect a new continent, and we know what that means. That means Northrend, that means Kultiris, that means the Broken Isles, that means the Dragon Isles. But we wanted to do more than that. We've got an entire continent to discover beyond the Western Storms. So when we travel there in World of Warcraft Night Squall 11.0, instead, we don't have a new continent this expansion. We have a new old world-sized continent. This isn't your standard Broken Isles. This isn't your standard Northrend. The new continent that we will be exploring beyond the Western Storms was as big as the original Kalimdor, just on the other side of the world. And the part that we will be discovering in this expansion is as big as Old World Kalimdor. It is, in many ways, a new world. That's what I would do. If they are going beyond the Western Storms and they're discovering like what's over the other side, then if I was in charge of the game, I'd be like, okay, our unique selling point for this expansion is literally a Kalimdor-sized continent. It doesn't have to be all in one piece. It can be islands and stuff, but as long as we can say that it is Kalimdor size. And think about it. Kalimdor isn't that big. You know, it's much bigger than a normal expansion zone, but it's maybe twice as big. Maybe 3 times as big. You know, it would be a lot of work, but that's what I'd make. You know, you are discovering an entire new side of the world here, and you know we can expand that over next expansions and stuff as well. You could have a raid the size of a zone, actually. Well, exactly, yeah, and especially if it doesn't have to be one continent, especially if it is like islands and things like that. And I think they will have tech, which means we can fly or sail from island to island without loading screens. That's what I think, right? And my thought process for that isn't based on any evidence. It's just based on what I would do. It's not based... I want to make it clear. So the evidence, I think, is quite strong that next expansion is beyond the Western Storms, okay? Which means a whole new undiscovered continent that not only is undiscovered by us, but hasn't even been written about in any literature that we've seen, right? So they've got complete free reign. You can put any Azeroth race on there that you want, but you don't have to put anything on there. You can invent completely new things. And then you've got this framing device of the pirates, kind of like you're going there in this huge, gigantic pirate horde and Night School and stuff. And yeah, I think so what I would do, my selling point in that situation, if I was making this game, is I would be like, we have to really emphasize the size of this new zone. We have to like be really clear that this is much bigger than a normal expansion zone, and it's actually more comparable to one of the old world zones. Like that would be the best way I could think of selling that expansion, basically. And so I would be like, we're pulling out the new stops, and I want to be able to say that it's as big as Kalimdor, because that is hype as fuck. That's what I would say. And that would be my mission to the team. I'd be like, I want to create something which we can say is like a new old world. So like, again, like I say, that's just kind of following the thought process from what a Beyond the Western Storms thing would be. The players start off on the boat into the uncharted lands, full of wonder, mystery, and most importantly, someone who can teach old world shamans how to tank. The closest we've got to zones that large is Kata. Yeah, exactly. And I think just going like, we thought instead of spending all those resources on, remaking and updating Kalimdor, which would essentially just mean putting new trees and buildings in, we thought, why not make a new Kalimdor beyond the Western Storms? That's how he'll sell it. I can guarantee. Like, if it happens, which it won't, but that's what I would, if I was Ian, that's what I'd be wanting to say up on stage. Because they know that everyone wants a world revamp. They know that that's what everyone wants. They know that's what people are talking about. And they're going to be like, we're not doing that because, in our opinion, we've done something better. Would be such a waste of time, though, considering a high percentage of players in WoW are now instance runners. By that stretch, you wouldn't remake the old world anyway, then, though, would you? I just don't think that's true. Anyway, I think the people that you see making YouTube videos and streaming are instance runners because that's the most repeatable content. But everyone gets excited about a new zone. Everyone gets excited about new questing and stuff. I think you got to remember that the people you see streaming WoW and doing Mythic Plus dungeons and doing Race to World First and stuff, they're not representative of most of the player base. People like a new zone to explore. People want a new thing, right? I wonder if they'll announce player housing. Well, also, going beyond the Western Storms and setting up, a foothold in the new continent would also, obviously, there's never a bad time for it, is there? But would obviously be, a great place to have player housing, right? The problem is people want houses in classic zones. Oh, yeah, man, definitely. But it would be a good way to introduce the tech. And I still think that the best way to do player housing would be, the best way to do player housing is however they can make it work. Because I've got the feeling that is going to be the actual thing that defines how player housing works in WoW. Literally, however they are able to make it work, that's how it will work. But, if I could choose, I would base it on ESO. 100%. For me, the ESO housing system isn't the best housing system in MMOs, but I think it would be the best one for WoW. Does that make sense? The Final Fantasy XIV system is the best one. The WildStar system was the best one, but the best one for WoW, I think, is basing it on ESO. It's like the tech for dragon riding. Develop it, then apply it to the old world. Yeah, exactly. Easier to put it into a new expansion first and then spread it out to the old world. 100%. It's always easier to put this new tech into a new expansion first where it's built for it and then work out how to put it out into the old world. So I think when we do get player housing, I think it will start in a new place. Just throwing something out there, would guild housing be a better option? I'd love guild housing. In many ways, if I could... it's so hard, right? Obviously, I want both. But if I was given right now a straight-up choice, and I know that I did... most of the player base disagree with me on this one. They would choose the other. But if I was given a straight-up choice between either personal player housing or guild housing, I would choose guild housing. I know I'm in the minority there. I know people want it to be a one-player thing and stuff like that, and I think it would be better for the game if it was personal housing, but I love guild housing. It's so cool. But I think overall you're gonna want personal housing for sure. Can you imagine? No, it's got to be personal housing. Personally, I would be more into guild housing, but I know that overall the player base wants personal housing, right? I get that. Again, guild house with personal rooms. Yeah, but Discordian Kitty's right. People want their own flat in Grizzly Hills, right? People want their flat in various parts of the old world. That's what people want. And the ESO system is the best way of doing that. And the personal system is the only way to do that, really. Guild housing, I'd much rather hang out with my guild than be alone in space, yeah. Silvermoon City, oh my god, I just don't think that's going to happen. If they can't get people to fly in Silvermoon, they're not going to be able to install player housing there. But whatever, man. That's just what I'm saying. I think the next expansion will be Beyond the Western Storm. I think, you know, the big pirate horde will be the framing device for that. And if I was working on this expansion, if I was in charge of WoW, the way I would want to sell that expansion, the thing that I would want to be able to say when I got up on stage to announce it, I would want to say that we were discovering a whole new landmass which is as big as Kalimdor. That's what I'd want to say. That would be my USP. It would be like, this isn't just discovering a new place on the map. This is discovering a new map. This new zone isn't like your standard expansion zone. This new zone is as big as Kalimdor. And by Kalimdor, I mean old world Kalimdor. I don't mean like the big content. Like, that's just what I would want to be able to say on stage if I was trying to sell this expansion that I've just made up in my fucking head, right? So it's not based on any... It's not based on any evidence. And as soon as BlizzCon gets announced, I'm going to make a video with this prediction, like a proper video. Because I'm certain they will announce it at BlizzCon. But, you know, and I think there are other things. I think they'll use, like, the loading tech that we're getting in Zaralek Caverns to be able to, like, fly or sail between because I don't think it'll be one big landmass like Kalimdor. I think it'll be lots of islands, but overall it'll be the size of Kalimdor. And I think, like, they'll have tech which will let you sail seamlessly from bit to bit. From like Zaralek and stuff like that. Dragon flying obviously will be a thing. There'll probably be some boat kind of transport thing that they'll do. Yeah, I think it'd be like super fun. And do you know what? Maybe Elemental Lords would fit with that. Well, and I don't know what this expansion's been called, but I'm calling it Night School in my head. Just because of the book about Night School, which is the thing that seems to be setting up all of this. So Voyage of Night School, just Night School. Like, WoW seem to be pretty into their one title, their one-word titles at the moment, so I think maybe Night School. Pirates are lame, though. Well, it's okay, they got peg legs for that. But yeah, thank you for sending this to me. This is, like, really interesting and very impressive in its own ways.